The latest round of Harry and Meghan speculation has crossed into some of the most legally sensitive territory around the Sussexes. Their marriage, their children, the line of succession, and the question of what the media is willing to say out loud. At the centre of it is Lady Colin Campbell, who appeared with Dan Wootton after making a series of explosive claims on her own platforms. The claims themselves have to be handled with care. They are not proven public facts, and several parts of them are disputed by available public records and by other royal commentators. But the fact that these claims are being made by a well-known royal author, amplified by independent media, and discussed in the wider royal community, is itself a story. It shows how far trust around the Sussexes has collapsed, how cautious mainstream outlets remain, and how one unresolved question after another keeps returning because Harry and Meghan have never fully rebuilt credibility with the public. Lady Colin Campbell's first headline-making claim involved Prince Harry and an unnamed woman.
Are you concerned, Lady C, about the potential for Prince Harry to sue you in a British court?
He can't sue me. You can't sue for somebody for saying that you're in love with someone else and that they're in love with you. There's no crime in being in love with someone, irrespective of your marital status or otherwise. According to Thomas Markle Jr.,
she said she had been contacted by sources in the United States with official or governmental links, and that these sources claimed Harry had met a woman of his own age with whom he was allegedly in love. She was careful, repeatedly, not to say he was having an affair. That distinction matters. In British defamation law, accusing a married person of a sexual affair can create obvious legal danger if the statement cannot be proved. Lady Colin Campbell appeared to understand that risk and framed her remarks around affection, emotional closeness, and the idea that two adults in their 40s might have a relationship that the audience could interpret for itself. In other words, she said, enough to create a storm, but not enough to make a direct allegation that could be tested easily in court. That is part of why the interview was so striking. It was not only the claim, it was the choreography around the claim. Lady Colin Campbell presented herself as a messenger who had been given information by people she considered credible, while also protecting herself with legal caveats. She emphasized that the sources were not conservative activists or obvious Sussex critics, but people she described as liberal Democrats in the United States with traceable identities and reputable connections. Her argument was that if people from a political world that Meghan might once have expected to be sympathetic were now contacting her, then something had changed in the way the Sussexes are viewed inside American circles. That is a serious suggestion, but it remains a suggestion. The identities of the sources were not revealed, the alleged woman was not named, and no documentary evidence was provided publicly. The natural question then is why the story matters at all. If no one is named and the allegation is carefully hedged, why does it spread? It spreads because it lands on top of years of speculation about the Sussex marriage. Harry and Meghan have built a public image around being a bonded, besieged couple who left the royal system together, fought the press together, exposed family grievances together.
Lady Colin Campbell has been dropping truth bombs all week about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and I am so delighted today that straight out of surgery, she's still here to deliver the truth to outspoken viewers. But let me just set this up before bringing Lady C in and asking a few additional questions, which I think will be very important. Lady C first broke
and created a new life in California together. That image has been central to their brand. If the marriage looks unstable, the whole Sussex narrative changes. Suddenly the story is not the heroic couple against the world. It becomes a question of what remains when the battles, documentaries, lawsuits, podcasts, and public grievances have worn down the relationship that supposedly justified it all. That is why even a carefully phrased claim about Harry being in love with someone else becomes explosive. It strikes at the emotional architecture of the Sussex project. Their public life since 2020 has depended on unity. Meghan needed Harry's royal identity to give her reinvention global power. Harry needed Meghan to frame his exit as love, protection, and moral courage, rather than resentment and rupture. Together, they were marketable. Separately, they become much more complicated. Harry without Meghan is a wounded prince who burned bridges and may one day look back on what he lost. Meghan without Harry is a celebrity lifestyle figure whose royal relevance becomes harder to sustain. So any rumor that suggests emotional distance between them is not just gossip, it threatens the brand. The second and even more sensitive part of the interview involved Lilibet and long-running surrogacy speculation. Lady Colin Campbell repeated information she said she had been given, including claims that Lilibet had been carried by a surrogate connected to Colorado and then brought to California. This is where the story becomes legally and ethically treacherous. There is public reporting, including reports based on Lilibet's birth certificate, that she was born on the 4th of June 2021 at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. People, Vanity Fair, E! News, CBS News, and others have reported that official paperwork places her birth there. PolitiFact has also described claims that Lilibet does not exist or was not born as officially stated as unfounded. So any responsible discussion has to begin with that. The public record says Lilibet was born in California, and there is no publicly verified evidence proving the surrogacy claims.
But Lady C was very careful with her reporting, which continued on her own YouTube channel, insisting that for legal reasons it was important for her to say this does not mean she's accusing Prince Harry of having an affair. Watch.
Well, Harry has met someone who is his age, with whom he is in love, and who, if Harry does...
That does not mean the speculation has vanished. It has not vanished because the Sussexes created unusual levels of secrecy around the births of both children, especially Archie in 2019. When Archie was born, Harry and Meghan broke with some royal expectations around the timing and handling of the announcement. There were reports at the time that Buckingham Palace had to clarify details because confusion developed around whether Meghan was in labour, whether the baby had already arrived, where the birth took place, and how the information was managed. Dan Wootton pointed back to his own reporting from May 2019 when The Sun published a piece about Harry and Meghan being forced to deny claims that Archie's birth had been stage managed. In his view, the signs of an unusual media strategy were already visible then. The problem is that secrecy and inconsistency create oxygen for rumour. That does not make every rumour true. In fact, many rumours are false, distorted, or built on misunderstanding. But when a public couple demands privacy while also using their family story selectively, the public begins to fill the gaps. With Archie, the lack of a traditional hospital step photo and the confusing timing of announcements became part of the mythology. With Lilibet, the distance from Britain, the California birth, the different certificate format, and the later use of selectively released images all created space for suspicion among critics. None of that proves surrogacy. It explains why the subject refuses to die. One specific claim discussed in the interview involved numbers on Lilibet's birth certificate, with some online commentators arguing that a number associated with the document suggested Colorado rather than California. That argument has been challenged. Brittany from Royal News Network pointed out that the interpretation being circulated online appeared to be wrong, and that similar numbering appeared on other California birth certificates. Official and credible public reporting still places Lilibet's birth at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. This matters because it demonstrates the danger of building a theory on a misunderstood administrative detail. Birth certificates, state file numbers, county registration numbers, and bureaucratic codes can be confusing.
Also tells me that Harry and Meghan have blotted their copy within the Democrat Party in the United States, because this is something that, why was I chosen to be told? I know I was chosen to be told because they knew that I would be able to check them out and I would go with it if once I found out that they were genuine sources. But these are people who have witnessed what's going on. And as I say, they're not Republicans, they're not anybody who's, they're not right-wing.
A mistaken reading can travel quickly when people already distrust the Sussexes. Lady Colin Campbell's response to that challenge was revealing. She did not fully abandon the broader claim, but she softened or reframed the precise Colorado point, saying she was repeating what she had been told and suggesting that perhaps the allegation related to a Colorado surrogate rather than the place of birth itself. That is the kind of shift that makes the story both fascinating and fragile. If the exact meaning of the source claim changes under scrutiny, then the public should be cautious. At the same time, Lady Colin Campbell argued that the important point was not whether every detail had been perfectly interpreted, but that people with official connections were raising concerns at all. That may be enough for an opinion show, but it is not enough for a mainstream news outlet to publish as established fact. This is the core difference between independent commentary and mainstream reporting. Independent shows can discuss rumors, ask questions, and frame material as allegations, provided they accept the legal risk. Mainstream outlets have different constraints. They need documentary proof, named sources, or a legal safe public interest reason to go further. They also have relationships with the palace, the royal rotor, lawyers, advertisers, and institutional reputations to protect. Lady Colin Campbell argued that mainstream media will not touch the story until there is some kind of resolution or undeniable public development. That may be true. It is also understandable. A claim about a royal child's birth circumstances is not ordinary gossip. It touches medical privacy, child privacy, family law, succession, and defamation risk. Still, the mainstream media's caution has its own cost. When journalists refuse to ask any questions at all, they leave the field to speculation. Dan Wootton's argument was that reporters do not need to declare the most extreme allegation true in order to investigate the surrounding inconsistencies. They can ask how the palace handled Archie's birth announcement in 2019. They can ask why certain details were corrected or clarified. They can ask what official records show.
How can he sue me? He can't sue me. This is precisely why I have made the point that I'm not saying that he's been having an affair. He can't sue me. You can't sue for somebody for saying that you're in love with someone else and that they're in love with you. There's no crime in being in love with someone, irrespective of your marital status or otherwise. There's nothing defamatory about it. Also, if Harry were stupid enough to sue me, he would have to establish a loss. Harry doesn't have a reputation to salvage. So he'd have to establish that I had somehow damaged his reputation. Well, he and Meghan have already done.
They can ask how succession law would handle complex parentage questions in theory without asserting that those questions apply to Archie or Lilibet. In other words, there is a responsible middle ground between reckless accusation and total silence. The line of succession is one reason the subject has such intensity. Prince Harry is currently listed 5th in line to the throne after Prince William and William's 3 children. Prince Archie is 6th and Princess Lilibet is 7th. Their positions are not decorative. They are part of the constitutional order, even if the practical likelihood of either child ever becoming monarch is extremely remote. The royal family's own succession page lists them in that order. Because succession is regulated by descent and statute, any public uncertainty around birth or legal parentage would become politically explosive. Again, that does not mean there is proven uncertainty. It means the stakes of the rumor are higher than ordinary celebrity gossip. Some commentators argue that if a child in the line of succession were born through surrogacy, it could create legal questions, because traditional succession rules have historically depended on lawful descent. Modern surrogacy law is complex, and UK law states that the legal mother at birth is the person who gives birth, with intended parents typically needing a parental order after a surrogate birth. But applying that general law to royal succession is a separate and highly specialized question. There is no public evidence that such a scenario applies to Archie or Lilibet. The reason the legal conversation keeps appearing is because critics see a possible constitutional vulnerability and want the palace to clarify the principle. The palace, for its part, has not treated this as a live public issue. Lady Colin Campbell suggested that if the matter were ever to be dealt with, the cleanest route might not be a dramatic public stripping of titles or a direct ruling about the children. Instead, she floated the idea that a future King William, with government cooperation, could support changes that would prevent Harry and his children from ever coming close to the throne, possibly on grounds unrelated to the birth speculation, such as residence or constitutional suitability.
Lilibet was definitely carried and birthed by a surrogate from the state of Colorado, transferred to Montecito by private jet. It was all pre-arranged and NDAs were signed by all who were present, and I'm not going to go into any further detail. But this information does go into considerably further detail, but I'm not going to go into it. Interesting. No.
That is not an announced policy, and it would require political action. But the suggestion reflects a broader view among Sussex critics that the monarchy's safest long-term path may be to neutralise the Sussex constitutional question without staging a public trial over every rumour. There is a separate issue in the way Lady Colin Campbell discussed Meghan's private medical history. The original interview referred to claims associated with Thomas Markle Jr. and Trevor Engelson, Meghan's former husband, including an alleged claim about Meghan having had a hysterectomy. This is precisely the kind of material that must be handled with extreme caution. Private medical claims are among the most sensitive things that can be said about any person, public figure or not. Meghan has not publicly confirmed such claims, and the existence of family members repeating or referencing them does not make them verified. In a rewritten script, the responsible approach is to describe this as unverified medical speculation that has been used by critics to fuel questions not as a fact about Meghan's body. That distinction is not only legal, it is human. Public figures can be criticized for hypocrisy, media strategy, business choices, interviews, contradictions, and the way they use titles or family narratives. But turning unverified medical claims into entertainment is a different matter. Even audiences who are skeptical of Meghan should be careful about treating someone's reproductive history as a public object. The legitimate public interest question, if there is one, concerns the line of succession and official records, not voyeurism about a woman's private medical status. That is why this subject is so difficult. It sits at the intersection of constitutional questions and intensely personal privacy. The Netflix material also came up in the interview. Lady Colin Campbell argued that when Harry and Meghan tried to answer doubts or show material connected to Archie's birth, they did so in a way that raised more questions for critics, including by showing a scan image without identifying details. Her argument was that if they were trying to prove something, they should have provided proof that could be checked.
Well, I have actually covered this on my channel previously because there have been changes, and I was just simply...
But there is a counter-argument too. People do not normally release full medical identifying details to satisfy internet speculation. A blurred or cropped scan may be privacy protection rather than evidence of deception. Both interpretations exist because the Sussexes have lost the benefit of the doubt with a large portion of the audience. Every private choice is read through suspicion. This is the pattern that defines the Sussexes now. If they say nothing, critics claim they are hiding something. If they provide a carefully selected image, critics say it is staged. If they release a document, critics inspect every number and formatting choice. If they ask for privacy, Critics point to Netflix, interviews, podcasts, books, Instagram posts, and paid projects. If they share family moments, critics accuse them of using the children. Once trust breaks, even normal actions start to look strategic. That is why the story around Lady Colin Campbell has spread so quickly. It lands in a public environment already primed to believe that there is always another layer beneath the official Sussex narrative. Dan Wootton's role in the interview is also significant. He framed the matter as something mainstream media refuses to confront, and he positioned independent media as the place where questions can be asked without the restrictions of the royal rotor. This is a familiar dynamic in modern royal commentary. Traditional outlets still have access, prestige, and legal teams, but they also have constraints. Independent commentators have less access, but more freedom to speculate, challenge, and pursue lines of inquiry that institutional media avoids. The danger is that freedom can become overreach. The benefit is that overcautious institutions can be pressured to answer questions they might prefer to ignore. The royal rotor itself came under criticism in the transcript. The argument was that too many royal reporters behave like stenographers rather than investigators, accepting palace briefings and reproducing the approved line. That criticism is not entirely new. Royal reporting has always depended on a delicate exchange of access and restraint.
Necessarily see, and I just picked this up while listening to your thing, actually. I'm not sure that they said that Lily was necessarily born in Colorado so much as that she was born to, I think she might have been born to Colorado mother and transported. I'd have to go back and see, because I picked up something listening that I hadn't picked up before. But it doesn't really matter whether they are claiming X, Y, or Z. I'm going with their information, and these are people who have government positions, and they are very checkable, and you know, it's but there have been
reporters who push too hard may lose access. Reporters who stay too close may lose independence. The Sussex story has exposed that tension repeatedly. When Harry and Meghan were working royals, palace staff managed much of the messaging around them. After they left, the couple attacked the press while also using friendly media to place their own narrative. The result is a bizarre information ecosystem in which almost everyone accuses everyone else of manipulation. In that environment, the mainstream reluctance to handle the birth speculation is not just about fear of Harry and Meghan. It is also about fear of damaging the monarchy itself. Lady Colin Campbell argued that the royal family may be embarrassed by the entire situation, but not responsible for creating it. If a major outlet pursued the story aggressively and failed, it could look cruel and reckless. If it pursued the story and found something serious, it could create a constitutional and reputational crisis. That is why the topic is treated like a live wire. It is not simply a Sussex story. It is a Crown story, a parliamentary story, a legal story, and a child privacy story, all at once. The important point is that asking questions is not the same as reaching a conclusion. It is possible to say that the public record places Lilibet's birth in California, while also saying that the unusual secrecy around Sussex family announcements has fed distrust. It is possible to say that Lady Colin Campbell's claims are unverified, while also saying they are politically and culturally significant because of who is amplifying them and how they are being received. It is possible to say that mainstream media is right to be cautious, while also saying it should not pretend the questions do not exist. That balanced position may be less dramatic, but it is more useful. Harry's litigation history also shapes the way media organizations respond. He has been willing to sue major newspaper groups, challenge the government over security, and fight long legal battles in Britain. Any outlet considering a story that touches his marriage or children would know it could face serious legal consequences.
Your scoop, doesn't matter. Have they been sniffing around? Have they been asking you about it? And I do note that Maureen Callahan, who of course hosts her own independent YouTube show, The Nerve, which is part of Meghan Kelly's wider network, did feature you and your revelations. She is a columnist for the Daily Mail. So I just wonder, is this sneaking ever close?
Lady Colin Campbell said she was not afraid of being sued because she believed she had avoided making a direct defamatory allegation. But a mainstream newsroom cannot operate on swagger. It has to assess whether the allegation is provable, whether the sources will stand behind it, whether the public interest is strong enough, and whether the language is defensible. That is why so much of the coverage remains indirect. At the same time, Harry's reputation is not what it once was. Lady Colin Campbell argued that Harry and Meghan have already damaged his reputation so badly that it would be difficult for him to prove further loss. That is an opinion, not a legal certainty. But it reflects a real shift. Harry was once one of the most popular members of the royal family. He was the soldier prince, the cheeky younger brother, the founder of Invictus, and the son of Diana, whose pain the public understood. After Spare, the Netflix series, the Oprah interview, and years of criticism of his family, many people now see him very differently. That decline in goodwill makes rumors more dangerous because audiences are less inclined to dismiss them. Meghan's position is similar but distinct. Her critics see her as the architect of the Sussex media strategy, the person who understood branding, celebrity, American politics, and emotional storytelling better than Harry did. Lady Colin Campbell suggested that Meghan's political ambitions in the United States may have been damaged if even Democratic-connected figures are supposedly sharing concerns about the couple. That remains unproven, but it fits a wider narrative that Meghan has struggled to turn American sympathy into durable influence. The early post-royal promise was enormous. Over time, the projects have been uneven, the controversies have multiplied, and the aura of victimhood has become less persuasive to many observers. That is why the interview tied together marriage rumors, birth speculation, legal caution, political circles, and media silence. It was not one clean story.
So to the mainstream, Lady C, do you think?
I think, Dan, that we all are sufficiently worldly wise to know that the mainstream media dare not touch this with a barge pole. They can only touch this when there is about to be some denouement, some resolution. They can't touch it in the meantime. They can't prod and poke, because if they do, they will end up, they will end up with egg on their face. They will also end up being excluded from various privileges that they have.
It was a cluster of unresolved Sussex anxieties. Is the marriage strong? Are the children being used as public symbols? Did the palace mishandle the early birth communications? Are the children securely and transparently placed in the line of succession? Are mainstream journalists too afraid to investigate? Are independent commentators filling a real gap or simply feeding speculation? Each question touches the others, which is why the story feels larger than the evidence currently available. To understand why the Archie birth story still has such power, it helps to remember what royal births usually do for the public. They create certainty, the announcement is formal, the palace notice is clear. The medical details that must remain private, but the basic public facts are handled in a way that leaves little room for confusion. The child is born, the family is informed, the public statement is issued, and the new place in the line of succession is understood. The Sussex approach disrupted that rhythm. Some of the disruption may have been motivated by perfectly legitimate privacy concerns. Harry and Meghan did not want to perform the traditional hospital step moment. They wanted more control. But control can come at a cost. The more a royal couple changes the script around a constitutional birth, the more important it becomes that the replacement script be crystal clear. Instead, the public saw ambiguity. There were questions about timing, about when Meghan went into labor, about when the palace knew, about where Archie was and about why the announcement appeared to land after the birth had already taken place. Again, none of that proves wrongdoing. Many families want privacy around birth, and childbirth is not a public performance. But a royal birth is also not a purely private celebrity event. It affects succession, it affects titles, it affects the monarchy's record. That is why confusion from the start gave critics something to hold on to. Once the first layer of trust was damaged, every later family detail became easier to question. The same dynamic applies to the use of children in Harry and Meghan's media projects. The couple have often hidden the children's faces, which supporters describe as responsible and protective.
Involvement with the creation of all of this speculation. And they're not trying to bring down the royal family. And they understand that if they poke the bear, it could actually end up affecting the prestige of the royal family very detrimentally and very unfairly, because the royal family have found themselves entrapped as a result of Rachel Zane's knowledge as a great legal expert of the law and how the law could be applied in such a way that her daughter and her son could end up being in the line of succession, irrespective of whether they had been delivered back.
Yet they have also allowed the children to appear in symbolic ways when it helps the family narrative. Home videos, milestone images, glimpses in documentaries, references in interviews, titles, birthday posts, holiday moments, and emotional stories about parenthood. That selective visibility creates a strange situation. Archie and Lilibet are private enough that the public cannot know much, but public enough that their presence still strengthens the Sussex brand. Critics see that as convenient. Supporters see it as a normal attempt to balance privacy with public life. The debate remains unresolved because the Sussexes want the benefits of both approaches. There is also a broader question about evidence. Lady Colin Campbell said she had checked the identity and credibility of her sources. That may be true, but the audience cannot independently verify it. Viewers are being asked to trust her judgment about people they cannot see and information they cannot examine. In ordinary journalism, anonymous sources can be legitimate, but they become stronger when supported by documents, multiple independent confirmations, or a willingness from the outlet to stand behind the reporting under legal review. In commentary, the standard is looser. A host can say, "This is what I have been told." A viewer can decide whether to believe it, but belief is not proof, and proof is what would be needed before such claims could move from online debate into the mainstream record. That is where Dan Wootton's 2019 point becomes important. His argument is not that he knew everything then. His argument is that journalists had enough oddities to keep asking questions. The Sun article he referenced, published on the 10th of May 2019, addressed claims that Harry and Meghan had stage-managed Archie's birth and included Buckingham Palace answers to several questions. From his perspective, that showed two things. First, that mainstream journalists were once able to force the palace to respond on the record. And second, that the story had unusual features from the beginning. Whether one accepts his broader interpretation or not.
Understand why the reluctance of the mainstream media to get involved. And I don't think the mainstream media will get involved until such time as this is about to be resolved, if ever it is. Because my own personal view on this whole matter is that in the next reign, Prince William, by then King William, can simply make a ruling in which, of course, he's allowed to make, and gets the cooperation of a government to mean that Harry and his children cannot accede to the throne because they...
The basic media lesson is sound. Early inconsistencies become much harder to resolve years later. If institutions do not communicate clearly at the start, suspicion hardens into folklore. The palace's position, however, is also understandable. Once a royal child's birth is officially announced and entered into the line of succession, the institution has a strong incentive not to keep reopening the matter. Every new clarification can generate more questions. Every defensive statement can look like panic. Every denial can be passed for hidden meaning. The palace may believe that the official record is enough and that engaging with online speculation would only dignify it. That is often how institutions behave. But the Sussexes are not ordinary private citizens, and their relationship with the public record has been unusually contentious. Silence may be institutionally tidy, but it does not always satisfy a public that feels it has been misled before. This leaves journalists in a difficult place. If they ignore the topic completely, independent commentators accuse them of cowardice. If they touch it lightly, they may be accused of laundering conspiracy theories. If they investigate aggressively and find nothing, they may be accused of harassment. If they investigate and find something, the consequences would be enormous. That is why most large outlets stay away. They understand that the legal and reputational risk is out of proportion to what can currently be proved. Lady Colin Campbell can frame her claims as information received from sources. A national newspaper would need far more than that. The marriage rumour works in a similar way. There have been repeated public attempts to read body language, separate appearances, business moves, travel schedules, and public statements as signs of tension between Harry and Meghan. Some of that is normal celebrity speculation. Couples can attend events separately without being in crisis. They can divide work, they can have different interests. But the Sussexes have trained the public to read their relationship as a political and emotional symbol. If the relationship is part of the brand, then the public will inevitably analyze it as part of the brand. That is why Lady Colin Campbell's comments about Harry allegedly being emotionally attached to another woman attracted attention, even though she did not make a direct affair allegation.
I knew this birth stunk back in 2019. I was part of the mainstream media, which gave me a certain power at that time, Lady C. You know what it's like. The mainstream media has more power to force official answers from Buckingham Palace. And they answered 8 questions to me on the record. Now, of course, at that point, did I know everything I know now? No. But I did actually get them on the record. That's the first time that they, and first and only time, Buckingham Palace, because remember, at the time, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were managed by courtiers within Buckingham Palace, the first time they've ever acknowledged it. And I know I've spoken about it before, but I'm just making the point that the signs were all there. And if we had...
What makes the claim potent is not evidence of an affair, because none was publicly produced. It is the possibility that Harry may be emotionally exhausted by the life he and Meghan created. That idea already exists in the public imagination. Many critics believe Harry has lost his family, his military identity, his country, and much of his old popularity. They see him in lawsuits, interviews, and public complaints, rather than in the joyful royal role he once occupied. Whether that perception is fair or not, it makes people receptive to the idea that he might be searching for comfort elsewhere, even emotionally. Rumor becomes believable when it matches an existing story the audience already tells itself. For viewers, the safest way to understand the situation is this. Lady Colin Campbell has made serious claims, but those claims remain allegations unless supported by verifiable evidence. Public records and mainstream reporting say Lilibet was born at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. Archie is publicly recorded as having been born at the Portland Hospital in London. Both children are listed in the official line of succession. Harry and Meghan have not publicly validated the surrogacy claims, and there is no court finding or official palace statement establishing them. At the same time, the couple's history of secrecy, staged seeming content, selective disclosures, and battles with the press has created the mistrust that allows such claims to flourish. That is the tragedy of the Sussex public story. The more they try to control the narrative, the less control they seem to have. They left the royal system partly because they said they wanted freedom, privacy, and safety. But their own media choices have kept them in the center of public debate. They asked to be believed, but repeatedly gave critics reasons to doubt them. They wanted to protect their children. But the children's names, titles, images, and succession positions have become part of the public brand. They wanted to expose the palace, but in doing so, they also exposed themselves to a level of scrutiny that may never fully disappear.
Who actually wanted to be journalists rather than just stenographers, which I think is a different job, then we might not be in this situation where such a cover-up has been allowed to take place. And again, I'm not blaming the British royal family, Lady C, but what I'm saying is that journalists should not just ignore this story. There are ways to do it without necessarily going quite as far as you have, but there are ways to do it that start the discussion. But look, Lady C.
Can I make a point?
Please.
Had they done their job the way you were doing your job at the time?
The mainstream media may continue avoiding the most explosive parts of this story unless something changes. That is probably wise from a legal standpoint. But ignoring the underlying trust problem will not make it go away. The responsible question is not whether every claim from Lady Colin Campbell should be accepted. It should not. The responsible question is why so many people are ready to believe the worst, and why official or semi-official explanations have not been enough to settle the public mood. That is where the Sussexes have a problem no lawyer can fully solve. If Harry and Meghan wanted to end the speculation, they would face an impossible choice. More disclosure could protect them from some rumors, but expose their children and private medical history to further public intrusion. Less disclosure protects privacy, but allows suspicion to grow. This is the trap created when private family matters are blended with public branding. Once the children become part of a Netflix story, a memoir context, a royal title debate, a social media strategy, and a line of succession discussion, the boundary between private and public becomes almost impossible to redraw. For the monarchy, the question is how long it can tolerate that ambiguity. King Charles may prefer to avoid confrontation. Prince William may prefer to wait. Parliament may have no desire to touch a politically radioactive royal family issue, but unresolved questions around Harry and his children will remain part of the constitutional background as long as they remain in the line of succession and as long as the public mistrust continues. That does not mean dramatic action is imminent. It means the issue will not disappear simply because mainstream outlets look away. In the end, Lady Colin Campbell's interview was not important because it proved everything she claimed. It did not. It was important because it revealed the state of the royal conversation. The Sussexes are now surrounded by a level of doubt so deep that even the most private and sensitive parts of their lives are discussed as possible public controversies. Independent media is willing to go where mainstream media will not.
None of what has happened would have
Totally. And why did Harry and Meghan want me cancelled? By the way, partly because I was doing my job. Do you see what I mean? And
not partly, totally, because you had a torch and you were shining a light on their dirty dealings and their falsity. And they don't object to the fact that you're honest. They do object to the fact that you're honest. They would like you to be as dishonest as many of the other journalists are.
Yeah, and some of them are just scared. Some of them are just scared. This is the thing. I want to be clear. Not every member of the royal rotor is engaged in a cover-up. Some of them are terrified. Look at what happened to Tom Sykes, booted out of the royal rotor. He could have lost all of his livelihood. Luckily, he decided to set up the Royalist and the rest is...
Legal caution shapes every sentence. Official records are weighed against rumors. Critics demand transparency while supporters see harassment. And somewhere in the middle are two children who should not have to carry the burden of their parents' war with the press and the palace. That is why this story should be handled with care. It is possible to scrutinize Harry and Meghan without pretending unverified claims are facts. It is possible to ask whether journalists failed in 2019 without declaring a conspiracy. It is possible to discuss succession law without targeting children. And it is possible to say that Lady Colin Campbell has opened another volatile chapter in the Sussex saga, while still recognizing that the burden of proof has not been met. What this episode really shows is that trust, once destroyed, is incredibly difficult to restore. Harry and Meghan may never be able to control every rumor, but they could have made those rumors harder to believe. Instead, through years of contradiction, secrecy, performance, and selective disclosure, they have created the perfect environment for suspicion to thrive.